Okay, so I did this also a couple of months ago. When ChatGPT was starting to become a thing, and I didn't record them, and probably would have been helpful to do that, so you could have just watched a recording. But some time has passed and some things have changed, and so maybe I'll just go over um, how AI kind of fits into being a FileWave admin. Um, I'll say from the start, there's not any direct hooks, right? Without leveraging something um, like Zapier or some other thing that might tie APIs together that also happens to have Chat GPT integration. But um, there are ways in my day to day that Chat GPT in particular, but there's also Bard from Google. Um, there's a few things now, so I just wanted to talk about it, and it can be a discussion, or I'm going to walk through kind of like a getting started. Let's see how this all goes. So I just have my browser open. So the first one is there's Bard from Google, and they weren't really the first one, but they're easy to show. I don't do too much with Bard, but I just want to show you that it's pretty easy to go to bard.google.com. I believe you have to opt in to a wait list, but the wait list takes just a couple of days, and then they give you access. Um, Obviously, you need like a Google ID to sign up for it, but if you use YouTube or something else from Google, you probably already have that. Um, so super easy to sign up for. Doesn't cost anything, um, and you can generally ask it very similar things to ChatGPT, and it has some of the same problems as other systems, and Bard may display inaccurate or offensive information. So I'll show you something that I know goes wrong with ChatGPT, and I bet it goes wrong here. Um, Please generate a 40 character random string. Right, so let's say I want to use it to generate a random string for something, right? I know we don't know the level of true randomness of this, but let's say, can you reverse the order of the string, right? So in theory, this would be able to reverse it. Now, ChatGPT will get this wrong every time. Um, and it's because of how AI works. So, so they actually gave me some Python code. Uh, that's interesting. So, so Bard actually has a smarter thing because ChatGPT would just give you the string wrong, but Bard gave me how a function to be able to reverse the string correctly. So I guess Bard wins. But you can see you can just kind of ask it, things. You can ask it for, can you give me a PowerShell script that can rename a Windows computer, right? And you try and when you're asking it things, you try and be as complete as possible in what you're asking for. So, it pumped out pretty quickly a script for me. And so here's the thing. The next piece of this is when I ask it for things, I need to test this. I need to validate that this is true because one of the things with AI is that it can confidently tell you a lie. So you just want to think about that, and but I will use AI. Generally, I use ChatGPT. I experiment with Bard a little bit. Um, you can ask it, how to make an email to somebody sound a little nicer, or how to make a draft of something. I use it all the time for um, things that I'm going to be sending out, like pretty much all my emails that you see from me, where it's like an announcement um, or something. I do through ChatGPT because it helps give me ideas, and maybe the version that it gives me isn't the final one, But I'll show you an example in ChatGPT and how to get started there because I really do quite like ChatGPT's functions. Um, but in the end, you could use whatever feels good for you, assuming your organization permits it. And the other thing is that you're in a country that permits it, because I believe Italy right now bans ChatGPT. Um, who knows what'll happen? There's also GDPR concerns if you're in Europe. Um, there's also the concern about what you're pasting in here. So, like, I've been asking it generic things. When I ask it to help me make an email that's going to customers, that's a public bit of information. There's nothing, if ChatGPT gets compromised, there's no secrets exposed. I'm not pasting in customer information, for instance, because that would be problematic without, a prior business agreement with them, dealing with the privacy, and especially since we're a global company and GDPR tends to be pretty strict about that stuff. So think about what you're pasting in there because, for instance, if you have a password that's used in your organization and you have it help you with a script, don't give it the password or the API key because that's then in its training database and one day could be public. And that one day could be pretty much any day. So think about the privacy there. Okay, so this is Bard, and generally the interface is just chatting with it. It's in a chat format, so I can ask follow-up questions like, can you give me something similar for Mac OS that runs in shell? So it knows the context of the previous, question or thread, and so then it'll be able to sort of offer me up a version that would work on Mac OS to accomplish the same goal. So, and both ChatGPT and Bard are pretty good at explaining why, even when they give you something that's completely fictitious and wrong, uh, they will explain why it did it. But that's where you could take the code and, you know, I think of AI as helping helping me in areas where I'm already a bit good and making me even better because then I can go back and look at this and I know, for instance, I know SEUtil. This tells you the computer name. There's also a host name field and there's a local host name field. There's sort of three names on a Mac. So I know that too. So when I think about this, it's going to get the computer name. It's going to ask you for a new computer name. Now, if you're going to execute this as a script non-interactively, that's not ideal. So I could maybe ask it to change it, to use a variable pass to it or something, right? Or I could have it work with me to make a CSV file that has computer names and maybe matching serial numbers or something. But then when I look here, it's going to use SCUtil, it's going to set the computer name. That's okay. As long as the computer name falls within the rules that SCUtil will accept. But I also know it didn't set the local host name or host name fields. And ideally, when you're renaming a Mac, you probably want to deal with those things. And host name and local host name have some special rules. I'm sure you've ever seen in the sharing preference pane on a Mac. When you type in a name, if it has a space, it puts a dash in the host name because a space isn't allowed. So I know that much. So for me, I could turn around and I could mold this into something more. But if I was just forgetting, like, what was that command? Um, and then I remember, oh, okay, it was SCUtil. And OSA script is a way to execute Apple script things from the shell. So let's see, after it renames, it tells system preferences to quit, tells the system to restart. I'm pretty sure that's what that would do. But you don't really need to reboot a Mac on a rename. A Windows machine you do. But here's the thing, I'm pretty sure that on the Windows side, and the reason is we started with Windows, Windows had a restart computer in the script. Because on Windows, you really do have to reboot when you rename a Windows machine for that to take effect. So I believe that it took this logic and applied all the logic without thinking through, hey, we don't really need a reboot. So when you're working with it, just kind of think through those things because it has a super large repository of information. It can think of really intelligent responses, but it can also be a little bit dumb, because I would have to then think about, well, why do I have this in here? So maybe I don't need it. So that's the thing. And so, Bard can also, just like ChatGPT, can say, write a short essay on simulation theory uh, at the that a 10-year-old child could understand easily. Right? So you can kind of ask it for some qualities about things. So it can do code, it can write, stories and things. And so if you're in a school, which I know some of you are working at a school, you'll probably see that students are already trying to submit assignments written by AI, and there are things like Turnitin that can try to identify AI. There was an issue recently at a university where a teacher pasted in papers that his student had written and asked it if ChatGPT wrote it, and ChatGPT said, "Yes, I did." In fact, only one person in the class used ChatGPT, and he had to reverse their failures to passes or to correct grades, except for the one person that came forward and said he did actually use ChatGPT. So ChatGPT will be pretty authoritative. It'll say, yeah, I did this, and it'll be a lie. And Bard will do the same. So just think about that. I see a couple of more people joined. If you want to chat, because this can be interactive, you can. Uh, oh, and Ryan, let me just answer Ryan's comment. There's a mute. Oh, okay, good. So Ryan's good now. Okay, and this will all be in the recording, minus the music you were hearing, Ryan. Uh, So yeah, if you want to pick that little raise hand thing, if anybody wants to speak. Otherwise, I'll just keep chugging along. So check out Bard. In the mobile app on iPhone and Android, there is a Google Lab. You'll see like a little like scientific, like a flask, and you click on it for labs in there, and you can enroll in the beta for Bard in the mobile app as well. Um, so Bard's pretty easy, doesn't have cost. Um, and then, so that's pretty easy. And you get, a general idea about this. I mean, Google also has this thumbs up and thumbs down. ChatGPT does as well. Um, it is helpful to give it feedback about what it got right or wrong. If you want to see the system get better, then do that. If you want to verify, that something is true, perhaps you Google it, and then, search for something in Google search. And then again, though, just like anything else, when you're researching, Google's going to give you websites. Some of those websites are true and some of those websites are false. And an example like simulation theory is just a theory anyway. So who can say if it's true or not? Um, and so there, that's Bard, like in a nutshell. It's pretty good, and I showed you where it answered a question in a better way than ChatGPT did. In fact, I'll show you ChatGPT getting it wrong. Um, so for ChatGPT, you can access that free. There's kind of two ways. Microsoft is a pretty deep partner with OpenAI, and if you're using Microsoft Edge, which I never used to do, I used to really dislike Edge, but Edge is not what it was. Edge is now a Chrome browser. so, but the funny thing is, Microsoft has somehow made it faster than Chrome, but it is Chrome. So it's interesting. And you can see if I click this little side, this is the B here, it pops out a little sidebar, and I have a chat, a compose, and insights. This is ChatGPT 4 basically. Um, you can say, do I want a more creative, balanced, or precise? So think about that as more precise is probably more true about certain things. More creative can be, um, let's say I ask it, to so give me some examples for a name of a new class my school will offer about AI, um, and make the name fun. Right? So I can ask it, or it could say be serious. If I had picked more creative, maybe the answers would be a little less predictable about what it could be. I don't know. The art of coding. Well, maybe not. I don't like any of those, but but it tried. I've used it for things like names of features of things and names of KB articles. So you can ask it things, and sometimes you won't like it. Came from its knowledge of the world, right? And I can say, can you make it more obvious that it is an AI class for beginners? Maybe. So you can kind of correct things, right? Okay, well, AI for dummies, that's going against the traditional, we're going with the traditional, like, whatever for dummies book series. And then it got a little more simple. So you have to kind of add your own creativity in how you explain things to it in the answer you want to get. And you can work with it. You can keep replying and kind of mold it until you get the thing you want. I think it's great for just spitballing ideas if you don't have a human to spitball with. Um, there's that. And here's the same like, dislike. I can export, I can copy, I can share it. So again, feedback is really great in training the system about, why was the answer good or bad, especially when it gives something totally fictitious. When it makes something up, usually they call that a hallucination. Sometimes you will see in actual chat GPT that it will make up URLs that never existed ever. And those are called hallucinations. Um, and they're trying to get better at that. Um, the GPT language model that's used here, it will give you links, and they will be real links. They won't necessarily be like you could get sites that are not truthful, right? Just like a Google search. And this language model has learned against the internet, so it can give you non-truthful sources. The great thing about getting sources is that you can see like, okay, well, these, how do these relate to this question, and then I can go there and see what it is, and I can evaluate it. So you really do still have to apply your brain to things. uh, so this is kind of neat. There's also this compose tab that's kind of neat. Give me a short email about a fire department fundraiser on Saturday called Boot Drive. People should show up and give all they can. Right? And I can make it enthusiastic, maybe, right? I can say maybe it's meant for an email that's going out, or maybe it's a blog post. I'll say message, right? I'll say it's a blog post. I'll say it's medium. I said short message. Uh, I'll just get the word short out of there because I can take advantage of these short, mediums, and longs. So let's just say medium. And then I'll generate a draft. And so these compose things, which you should see that it'll spit something out. Occasionally this will time out and you have to pick to do it again, but let's see if it gives us anything. And that's the funny thing. These systems get so busy that sometimes it just simply does not answer. You saw that Bard was pretty quick at responding. Google's got well, Google and Microsoft both have a lot of resources against it. I suppose it's whichever one is overworked at the time. Um, oh, there we go. The boot drive will take place, right? So this would be a hallucination, right? I gave it no information about what fire department, yet it came up with a street. But still, that could be helpful for a draft because I could put in the actual address that it's at. So this could be helpful. And then there's these left and right arrows here that I believe, though this one is not showing it now. This one will redo it. Normally, when there's multiple versions, you can go left and right to get to other versions. See, so it's going to regenerate that because I clicked the regenerate, so I get a new sample one. This one's coming in a bit longer. So again, pretty good and free. I'd say that most of my time is spent in the chat tab rather than the compose tab. Though the compose tab is pretty helpful for generating something quick. Um, I've shown like putting in a paragraph. One other thing that you can do that's really helpful is give it a series of bullet points. So whenever you're making like a detailed email about you have some maintenance that's happening on the weekend, right? There's some bullet points about it, that certain servers are being shut down, that the power will be off from this time to this time. You can actually give it bullet points. And let's just do it in chat. I need to send an email to all of our company staff about some maintenance this weekend. And then I could put a star. I could say Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. All email will be down. VPN will be available, but you can't connect to your virtual desktops. Right, so I can give it, sort of bullet points, and then it will take the bullet points, and I only gave it a couple of bullet points, but it'll work that into the email as the details. And you can put bullet points in and sub bullet points and really make it structured. It'll write quite a bit, and then you can go in and look for any craziness in the wording or anything inappropriate. But so much easier to get a draft that's usable. So, okay. And you can ask questions in the chat if there's something that, if everybody's good with this, if you've already kind of worked with the Bing chat or Bard, then I'll go over to ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is chat.openai.com, right? You have to sign up for an account. There's still a free tier where you sign up and you can use I think it's still ChatGPT 3.5, like that, where there's one model. But I happen to experiment with ChatGPT Plus, which is like $20 a month. I partially do it because of curiosity and partially because I use it so often. But if you were to use Plus, you can actually pick which model you're using. So this is just like software, right? Version 3.5. ChatGPT 3.5 is like one generation behind. ChatGPT 4 is a little slower than 3.5, but I think is smarter. I'll use the word smarter. It also has options to, for instance, make it able to browse the internet. Um, Previously, people had cheats. There were Chrome extensions that would basically feed ChatGPT some internet information to make it seem like it had internet access. But with the browse with Bing, it actually does browse the web. It's a little bumpy right now. Sometimes it'll get errors, but it generally works pretty well. Code Interpreter lets you actually upload a file for it to look at and do things with. Um, and actually, if I make, I don't know, let me see if I have, let's say, let's find amongst all my stuff, desktop, clean up, just looking for a file because it's pretty neat some of the stuff you can do, although it's a little limiting because you can't really upload like private stuff. But if you're working on public data, it's certainly easy to do. Um, I don't have my CSV file. Let me make one really quick. All right, so I made a very simple spreadsheet with data. I'm going to save it. I'm going to pick to upload it. Let's say, oh, I know why. Let's see. Here, wait. Let me find. Oh, because it's on my desktop. Silliness. It's not on my desktop. One thing on macOS that I wish is that when you pick iCloud Drive, for instance, that you could actually get to the root of your actual machine. So I have to go to Pictures because from Pictures you can get to your desktop, or well, to my root account. Hey, here now it's really on the desktop. Okay, so there we go. There's the file. A couple of hoops to jump through for a demo, but it's going to look at this file, figure out what it is, and then the neat things you can do is you can ask it like, how many licenses are in North America, and it actually understands the document. That's why I think things like Microsoft has Copilot, and if you're a Microsoft 365 customer, Copilot, which is not yet out, as I understand it, it's only with a small group of customers, but when it is out, if your organization uses Microsoft 365, like we do, then um, you, in theory, would be okay to use that Copilot. I don't know with GDPR, I don't know what the rules are. In North America, it's probably okay to use, but again, your organization and whatever your privacy rules are. But in theory, if you're using Microsoft systems, Microsoft, in theory, has taken data privacy into account, but definitely worth checking on. So I'm going to ask it some questions. I'm going to say, how many customers are in North America? And now my example I gave it very little data. Like you could imagine that you could pass it very complex data. And so let's see. So it's assuming that I'm talking about customers because I didn't really use the word customers anywhere. So there are two companies, right? Um, uh, which are they? And with these plugins, because for instance, this is leveraging a plugin, you have to think about that the data is not only going to ChatGPT, but it is possibly getting sent to the third party that runs that plugin that's being used. And in the settings within ChatGPT, you can determine um, whether which plugins are used. So I turned on pretty much all of them for my experimenting, but and this would be correct. I could say which companies are not. Now I really should say which are not in North America, but let's see if it gets it right. And it should come back with Time Lord Corp, which should be in the UK. And so you could imagine, there we go. You could imagine that if you had a very large data set, that if you were in a position where you were okay that that data could go into an AI system, that you could ask it in plain language, anything about that data, and just be able to find relationships without necessarily knowing how to do it or just taking the mental energy to do it in something else. Um, so you could just ask it some quick questions. That's why I'm really hopeful that AI will that some of the data privacy issues will be addressed, because it obviously makes it so much easier. Let me show you that example that I talked about where I know it'll get it wrong. Generate a random 40 character string string. You also want to be careful of typos because then it'll answer things in a, and actually maybe I don't want to do it here with the plugin. I'm going to do a new chat and I'll do generate a random 40 character string. Okay, reverse the order of characters in the string. Okay, so WV. Okay, gets that right, gets the caret right, gets the G right, gets the and. Oh, $sign should be next, but it's not. So this would be an example where you have to get the limitations, and it's all about how language models work. And so there are some things that it's particularly bad at. It's generally bad at math, but there's a plugin now for ChatGPT to help it with math. Um, so if I was writing some kind of program and it needed me to reverse this string, and I took this and I looked at just the beginning of it without considering the whole string, I would incorrectly say that this was, the exact reverse of the original string. So that's problematic. So that's part of the whole like don't trust and verify. They say trust but verify, but don't necessarily trust. Start off with this is helpful at giving you something to then experiment with if you're in a place where you don't have much information. Um, so, like, for instance, I think I used it to look up the information about the institutional file vault keys being deprecated in Ventura. Now, it used the browser plugin, which was nice because ChatGPT in particular is limited to data without the plugins. Its data stops in 2021. So anything that happened in the world, like the war with Russia and Ukraine, um, it has no idea about. It doesn't know who the CEO of. It thinks Jack Dorsey is the CEO of Twitter. Um, so you also have to think about, if you're using ChatGPT, that its view of the world stopped in 2021. unless you're using a plugin like the browser plugin, in which case it searched the web. You can expand some of these plugins and you can see like what it did. So you can see maybe where it went or what it was looking for. So you can validate it. But this, with the plugin, is a lot more like Bard, where Bard will actually search sites when it's searching. So think about that. So now, yeah, so then I guess with ChatGPT as well, there's an iPhone app, just like I said, Google has a beta of their mobile app. There's an official ChatGPT app for iOS and Android. Although that app is limited to North America right now, I believe. The Google app might be open in more countries. Um, so now, how would you apply this, right? You can get to chat.openai.com, or you can go to bard.google.com, or you can install the Edge browser and you can, uh, take advantage of ChatGPT here. The only thing that in all of this that would cost money is if you paid for ChatGPT Plus. And if you don't pay for ChatGPT Plus, you still do get ChatGPT 3.5. I don't think you get any of the plugins with that. So that's where, if you need something that's searching the internet for stuff that's happened in the world since um, 2021, then maybe Bard and Bing's Chat GPT are better. But if you have $20 to spare, Chat GPT is quite fast and is quite good and has a lot of plugins to work with data. So now, as a FileWave admin, this was sort of a really long way to come around to um, what I would use this for as a FileWave admin. So think about custom fields. Custom fields are scripts, right? And what can I collect there? I can collect, virtually anything. So, if I make a new chat and I'm thinking about, maybe like a custom field that I'm trying to collect, like, and because this is a conversation with a computer, you can sort of ask questions, and based on the answers, ask some more questions, and maybe it'll get you to what you want. Um, I'll say we have the Discord chat so you can ask humans in person, but if you're in here, sometimes you can kind of find what you need pretty quick. So let's see. So a script. Let's see. Can you make a PowerShell script that echoes out a list of all users on the Windows 11 system who are administrators? I want the output to be like admin 1, admin 2, admin 3, where it is a single string, comma, separated. So you can give it some guidance and it will explain how it got there. And then I could take what it told me and then I could just try it out in a VM. Worst case, it's completely wrong. Um, it's usually not completely wrong for scripting and coding. So, I would take this and then I do some tests like, what does the output look like if there's only one person that's an administrator versus what does it look like if there's two or three? Because I could find that in the way that it's done the output, that if there's only one, that I get user one and then a comma on the end, where I might want to ask it, don't put a comma if there's only one result, which I think it might be doing just that, but I'd have to paste it in and see what it does. So you could do that. You could think about like is there maybe I'll use ChatGPT 4. Is there any way to check or set the sleep or the power options on Mac OS via script to check sleep settings, for example. Right? Like maybe I just don't have any idea. I could Google it, but the really nice thing is here it will give me like the command, it'll give me example, it'll give me output that I should expect. So, you know, it basically is like when you would go to Stack Overflow to look for something, but you don't have to read through 100 conversations to find it. When they train the system, or if you go to Bard to do it, when they train that system, it already read through all that stuff. So, this is a great way to see. And I know that PMSet is the command that can do that. So, but maybe there are cases where it doesn't quite do what you want. So then you can just kind of interrogate this a little bit more and ask it for more possibilities, and then you can vet if that all seems true. Um, and you can see there's a lot of info for something that's seemingly a simple question, but it's great because then you'll understand it more fully, right? So I use it for things like that. Um, I'll use it for things like I had a script, and that script would take a list of things. Um, and originally that list of things was just a variable in the script. And I wanted to pass like a CSV file to it. So I pasted in my script and I said, "Hey, can you modify this to take a CSV file?" And I told it what the format of the CSV file would be, and that it would use that for the variable. And so it then tweaked the script in the language that the script was written in to be able to read in the file and be able to take that as the variable. And I could have done that myself, but asking it to do it and it making the changes in code was super easy. I saw that it worked, and I was great. I mean, I just double checked it, basically, but it was right from the start. Um, if you don't do so much coding, um, there is also the benefit, like that example about this maintenance email, right? So I have, this email that I was doing over in Google. So I'm going to make a new chat, and I like ChatGPT 4. I'm going to say, read the below, and then I will ask you questions about it. So sometimes I do this. I hold down shift and hit enter to get those carriage returns, but I'll ask it to ingest something, and then I could ask it to do things. Um, you can do this also if you want to set like a goal, like you want to create a new name of a product. Um, you can ask it to ask you questions to get to the end result, which is really good. Um, let's say, so I had it read this. Let's imagine this is a much longer email, because I'm sure that there's things that happen in the business year or school year that you have to send out these long emails, and you want to maybe double check that, let's see, will the power be back on Sunday? I can ask it things about it, right? And see, because I'm sure you do this, you draft something and then you think, okay, in what ways could somebody misinterpret this? So that you can ask it a whole bunch of things. And then if there was something vague in a larger email or conflicting statements in a larger email, this will explain it to you right away. It'll say, well, earlier in the email you said Saturday 9 to 5, but later in the email it said Sunday. Um, and it will 100% help you with corrections like that. You know, um, can you give me a version that um, that is much more formal? I don't know. I'm trying to think of good examples, but you can, esteemed colleagues. Yes, so that's one way that it's making it formal. So, again, you may write something in draft, and maybe you want to change the tone. Some examples are, I will write something. You'll see messages from me, and like I like to think that I'll sound, positive about something that's especially a positive change. So maybe I'd paste it in here and just ask it, does anything in here come across as negative where I didn't intend it to be? Um, and it will give you suggestions. You don't have to use them, but frequently they are good suggestions. You can ask it about grammar issues. Um, and this is pretty cool. So I will show you. Now I'm going to have to use Google Translate to get this, but and that's only because I don't have a Hebrew keyboard in front of me. I'm going to say, and I'm only using Hebrew because I can understand much of it. Um, right? Be a story about an apple. Yeah, Tapuz is apple. Okay, copy. So one way that the system really helps is that period should be there. So one way that this helps is someone who doesn't maybe natively speak English but wants to search about things in our knowledge base because we added a chat GPT to our knowledge base. They're able to ask the system in their language and get a response. Um, this can be helpful to you guys if you're learning another language. Again, it can write total nonsense sometimes, well, it's real words, it's good grammar, but it can be a lie. So, you can, and if you're wondering if you've never seen Hebrew, Hebrew goes right to left instead of left to right. That's why it draws in that funny way. Uh, well, not funny, but different because it's a right to left language, which can be a little tough on my computer. So it's writing the story, and we won't really translate that whole thing. Although, actually, it would be interesting. This is one thing I have not tried to ask it to do, um, to ask it to translate this into English. Um, yeah, let's not, we won't wait for it. I think it'll do it from what it has. Yep. So it's kind of neat, kind of taking like Google Translate, which Google Translate has some pretty big limitations on the amount of text. Um, so it is kind of nice if you have to go language to language um, to have it be able to write something. Uh, but if you do that and you're going to publish it, you probably want to have a native speaker read the thing and just validate that you haven't written something awful. Um, that would be the one caveat. It's funny, and it used a name for the bird that was a Hebrew name. So that's kind of interesting. So yeah, so things like that. You can use this for a lot of writing, a lot of um, scripting, and that's the way I would use it as a FileWave admin is to write emails to my users. I use it to write and draft documents like the knowledge base. And I should probably show, if I go to the knowledge base, and the knowledge base, by the way, is going to get hopefully another sort of revision to make it a bit better. Atlassian has some issues for us. Um, I could show you, actually, I'll show you quickly the thing that I'm looking at. Um, so, so this, which is online, doesn't have, oh, I gotta fix that. So I can't show the chat GPT thing there. I'll show it over here in the real one. So this chatbot interface, we know we have 700 plus articles in the KB. We try and structure them, but if you say to yourself, I want to know how to do custom iOS wallpapers. If I approach the knowledge base, and you can think about this for your own, knowledge bases. I'm sure you guys have knowledge bases for your school or for your company, internal knowledge bases, perhaps. How would you approach finding that customize the iOS wallpaper? Maybe you'd look for a tag about it. I don't think so. Um, but you might dig into Apple, and then you might, go to iOS, and then it's not there yet. And the reason it's not there yet is because at first it ends up in release notes. And this is kind of the nature of Confluence. Because Confluence articles live in one place at a time, this article, usually what we do is we try and move articles. They start out under their release, and then we try to move them like a bit later. But you can see where I would probably, if I was in your shoes, be a little frustrated with that experience of trying to find that article. Now, I would try to use search. Now, if you're not signed in, let's see if they finally fixed it, because for a while the live search was not working. Atlassian was not. So customize. It is working again. Good. I heard it was. So, I have to think of the right words to use, right? So maybe wallpaper, and then I do get there, right? So if I have the right combination of words that happens to be in there, and they really do have to be in there. So like if I said, like, let's say I think about the screen as like a desktop, depending on what my native language is, I might think of that as a desktop, or even just how I think of those devices. But I probably would not get to my answer. But if you use AI, that's why it's down. Okay. So Wonder Chat's down. Well, then this is a terrible example, and that is why it wasn't showing up on the other one. But if you go here after this, because Wonder Chat, by the way, is made by three folks in Singapore that I've been working with, that I've been helping them. It's typically up. Um, it's unexpected that it would be down, but you can ask it just like I was asking in the other windows. I was asking ChatGPT questions about things. You can ask it, hey, how do I customize the desktop of an iOS device? And it would probably give you the correct answer, because it would think about, like, that's the background screen. It doesn't have to be an exact match. It just conceptually has to be the same. And it's really good at that. And the chat GPT we have here, that unfortunately is not working today, but I can tell you is working this week because I was in it while I was in the UK. Um, you can ask it things and it will give you the source of the information too, which is super helpful. So I could see the steps to do it, and I could get to the article so I don't have to search. And so my goal for the knowledge base, there's a couple of improvements, and I'm leaning towards this one called Bookstack, which, if you guys have an internal KB, Bookstack's pretty cool because it's actually free. It's been built for about 7 years. Um, it has a system kind of like what Two Canoes does for Xcreds. You can use it for free. They sell a support contract. And really, if you're using it for business, you should really buy a support contract, right? So that you support the author. But this thing is translated into lots of languages. Conceptually, it's like a really great KB, and it does tie into that chatbot. So one improvement here over Confluence is an article does not have to live just in one place. The same article can live in two places. So an example would be TeamViewer. So when I go into TeamViewer and I'm looking at this list of articles, this is going to also be the same list of articles that when I go to Microsoft in TeamViewer, I'm looking at the same thing. In this system, they call this a book. So a book has pages, which are articles, and chapters. Chapters can contain pages. Um, Books live on a shelf, and they have an interesting breadcrumb system. So up here, if I click here, I can see the other books. So I get to Apple, So if I was looking for that customized iOS wallpapers, um, that would be easy to find perhaps in the release notes section and here. But even better would be that you would just use the little AI search bot. You'd find what you want right away. I kind of feel like the future of knowledge bases is not a menu like this where you dig into topics. It is probably a conversational thing that you come here and you search for the thing you want. And if you run a knowledge base, I use AI all the time to find what we're missing articles on. So I'll ask it about something, and if it doesn't have an article, I realize, well, we've never published an article. Or if the information it gives me is outdated, that then helps me to then go update those articles. Um, the other nice thing about AI is I can train it on this KB and FileWave.com. So it can know things like if we have a white paper about something, if there's like pricing information or other stuff. So you can kind of come to one bot, ask it anything about FileWave, and it will know. It won't maybe know things about out there in the world and doing scripting. It can't be your do everything bot, but it's really focused on this. And then I would hope in the future it would be kind of neat if it could start off with a focus on the knowledge base, and that you could then ask it to, hey, can we expand this out, you know, into, you know, the rest of world knowledge? And, I found the article on a custom field. Now I want some help making a custom field. Wouldn't it be super if it could then transition to searching the world for stuff? And Sean, yeah, we're recording this. And I'm going to post this one. I didn't post the ones I did a few months back, which was a shame, but this one, yes. So it should give you kind of a starting point of the different AI things out there. Um, there are quite a bit of KB plugins. Um, so Wonder Chat is one, which, oh, their whole site's down. I will have to chat with them. Uh, it's probably some glitch, but there's also other ones like Right Page, um, where also this is a product that, just like Wonder Chat, its entire purpose in life is indexing content, learning about content, and asking it questions about that content. And I think that makes things super easy for any kind of organization. You know, I think about like a corporate handbook. You know, you might publish it in some knowledge base, but every company I've ever worked at has had a giant handbook. It's kind of a pain to go look for how much can I expense for a meal when I go on a work trip. So much easier just to ask. Uh, you know, Wendy here in HR would say, "Oh, just ask me," but like I'd rather ask her like a super complicated question, like I have 200 hours of vacation and will they roll over this year or do I have to use some by a certain amount? Because that question can depend on a lot of things. Like the state of California has legal requirements about how much vacation can roll over, whereas other states in the US don't. And what if I'm based in Europe? So there are really complex things that HR people really should spend their time answering because they're hard questions. All the basic stuff could be just handled by a bot and handled really well. So there's things like that. Um, there's a really interesting thing called Rewind. Oh, actually, well, Reworked is also interesting, but I will come back to that in a second. But there's Rewind AI as well. And there's just this rabbit hole of stuff that you could discover as you start to look at AI. There's also language models that you can run on your computer, especially if you have an Apple Silicon Mac. They run this stuff really well. I run a bunch of stuff on my Mac where I can run it locally. It overcomes the privacy stuff because it's learned against uh, it's basically everything is local. You can train it against OpenAI's system, which does have a cost. So a couple of them that I've seen, it can cost about $600, which is not nothing. It can cost about $600 to train it, but once it's trained, it's effectively as good as ChatGPT, but with none of the privacy concerns because everything's on your computer. None of it leaves. You could, in theory, run that on a server uh, in your environment, and then you've overcome the privacy concerns. Rewind.ai is one of the coolest things I've seen. And they initially did have more privacy concerns. If you read through, they're getting better and better. Um, the idea of this is it only works on Apple Silicon Macs right now, um, but it watches everything that you do. It will listen to everything that you do if you allow it to. Um, and so you can ask it things like, um, give it a summary of the meeting that was last Wednesday at 6 p.m. And it can look through what it has and give you a summary. Now, that summary of meeting thing is one example where privacy is not 100% yet, because they do run some data through ChatGPT. They're transparent in their info. You can read like what stays local, and essentially, pretty much everything stays local from what I've read, except for when it goes to do meeting summaries in particular. But definitely read privacy stuff when it comes to AI. Think about where the processing's happening like anything else, and think about if it's okay that that information go there. But I could see this becoming something integrated into Mac OS, for instance, like as an Apple thing, or on the Windows side, where Microsoft and Apple would both be sort of privacy first on it, right? And just like Apple always talks about how processing happens, on system and the data doesn't go to them or it's encrypted end to end. If they do this, the next version of Mac OS or Windows 12 could just basically remember everything that you do, and capture it in a way that's compliant with privacy rules globally. Um, it is really neat because there are things that are just on the tip of your tongue. You can't remember them, but they're in here. So it's really, really cool. And then Agent GPT is also really cool. Um, this definitely, has privacy concerns because it's all running. It uses ChatGPT for one, and uh, there's the privacy issues of their system. But this is a web interface for Auto GPT. So if you've not heard of Auto GPT, Auto GPT is on GitHub. And yep, this is it. So Auto GPT is an attempt to turn ChatGPT into um, like AGI, like to to make it more generalized intelligence in a way. So you give it a mission. You start it up and you say, your mission is that you're a writer for the Wall Street Journal. You're going to make an article that's about a particular topic, or maybe your mission. You're an entrepreneur. Your mission is to create a business that would cost no more than $50,000 US to start up. That would um, focus on a certain topic, and you set it loose, and it will just continuously work on the problem until it gets to a solution. And one thing that I didn't talk about in all the AI bots is that they only have a certain amount of memory for their session. So you can have a long enough chat session with ChatGPT that it doesn't remember the things from the beginning of the session. Basically, the older stuff falls out of memory. This uses Redis or Pinecone, which are memory systems, storage systems. There's a few other options, but it actually gives ChatGPT basically long-term memory. So it overcomes that, and it's just insanely cool if you want to look at like where AI is heading. Hopefully, all good stuff, no horrible stuff. But so then Agent GPT is basically, if you want to run Auto GPT, you have to install it on your machine. You have to know Python a little bit. Um, but you can ask it to do things, and it will go off and do them, and it'll give you the result. Um, this agent GPT does it all in a browser. So you give them a name, you give them a goal. It will use in settings, maybe it's not in settings. If I logged in, you would see my API key. And yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining. And I will. This is going to be recorded, so if you want to catch any end bits, uh, you'll see it in the recording. But this is basically Auto GPT in a browser. You can set it loose. This is great because it gets rid of that technical thing where you needed to know Python. You don't need to know anything to take advantage of this. And it will just continuously work on your problem until it gets to a solution. So pretty cool. And that problem could be that you're developing like a script or an application, and it could be making chunks of that. Um, and I didn't talk about in here anything about art. Um, if you want to get into art, there's like Dali, there's Midjourney. Midjourney is really great. And I know I should end soon because this was supposed to go uh, till 11 minutes ago, but you'll see Midjourney in the AI art channel here. They used to let you generate some stuff for free. They got rid of that. There is, if you want to look at AI art that's free, Leonardo.ai gives you some tokens every day. And Leonardo.ai is incredibly cool because you can take an image, select a portion of the image, like let's say you select the sky and you tell it to add birds. So where there weren't birds before, it will add birds to the sky while maintaining the rest of the image, where there aren't so many systems that do that. But this one's nice and you can get free access. And the getting early access, you get access in like 3 days if you sign up. So that one's also an interesting thing for art. Um, Microsoft in the browser does have an image creation tool that I don't think I have in here, um, but they have a thing based on Dali, and they give you free tokens as well. Um, I should look for Microsoft Edge image creator. Might as well show how to get there. That is, yeah, so image creator. Nope, it's not. Well, you can follow this article, and I know that you can add it because I've had it before in my browser, and it does some basic stuff and is free to use to an extent. When you run out of tokens, then you'd pay, but that would assume you're using it so much that it was helpful. Leonardo.ai 100% free again with tokens. You can mess around all you want. Midjourney has cost from the start because some people were scamming the system to make free account after free account and we're never paying for it. And obviously, that's not a good business model. So, okay. So, I think I talked about a lot of stuff. Um, so, I'd say if there's any questions in chat or anybody wants to raise their hand, in the top right corner is a little hand. You could, or I could let you go. I hope I showed ways that you could, I guess, ways to get into AI, things it can do, considerations about why you might not use it in certain scenarios, and privacy considerations, and maybe that gets you started. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording.